Over the top? No, we had no over the top rules. We were totally reasonable, thoughtful parents who made solid decisions at every turn.
You know Ron Howard, right? The guy who made us laugh as little Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. The same person who became one of Hollywood's most respected directors, giving us incredible films like A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, and so many others. He's always been that good guy in Hollywood, the one who never seems to get into trouble, the one who always has something positive to say. But something has changed. Ron Howard has finally broken his silence about something that's been weighing on his heart, and what he's revealed has shocked everyone. This isn't the Ron Howard we thought we knew. This story is bigger than you think, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why his words have sent shockwaves through Hollywood and beyond. Let me take you back to where it all started. Ron Howard wasn't just any child actor. He was America's sweetheart. When he played Opie Taylor starting in 1960, millions of families invited him into their homes every single week. He had that innocent smile, those bright eyes, and that natural talent that made everyone fall in love with him. Unlike so many child stars who crash and burn, Ron seemed to have it all figured out. He grew up, starred in Happy Days as Richie Cunningham, and then did something that most actors only dream about. He stepped behind the camera and became one of the most successful directors in Hollywood history. But here's the thing about Ron Howard that most people don't realize. Throughout his entire career, spanning more than 6 decades in this business, he's been incredibly careful about what he says publicly. He's never been the type to start drama or throw people under the bus. He's always been diplomatic, always professional, always measured in his words. That's part why his reputation is so spotless. In an industry filled with scandals, meltdowns, and public feuds, Ron Howard has been like a breath of fresh air. He minds his own business, makes his movies, and stays out of trouble. So when Ron Howard actually speaks up about something controversial, when he actually breaks his silence and shares his true feelings, you better believe people are going to pay attention. And that's exactly what happened recently. What he said has left people stunned, confused, and in some cases, deeply disappointed. The story centers around a film that Ron directed back in 2020 called Hillbilly Elegy. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, let me give you some background. Hillbilly Elegy was based on a best-selling memoir written by a man named J.D. Vance. The book told the story of J.D.'s difficult childhood, growing up in poverty in Ohio, dealing with family struggles, addiction, and the challenges of Appalachian culture. It was a deeply personal story that resonated with millions of Americans who saw their own struggles reflected in those pages. When Ron Howard decided to direct a film version, it seemed like a perfect match. Ron has always been drawn to stories about real people facing real challenges. He's never been interested in making shallow entertainment. He wants his films to mean something, to touch people's hearts, to make them think. So taking on Hillbilly Elegy felt like a natural choice for him. He assembled an incredible cast, including Amy Adams and Glenn Close, both of whom delivered powerful performances. The film was released on Netflix, and while critics had mixed opinions, many viewers connected with its raw and honest portrayal of family dysfunction and the struggle to escape poverty. Ron Howard put his heart into making Hillbilly Elegy. He spent time getting to know J.D. Vance personally. They had conversations about the book, about the characters, about what the story meant. Ron wanted to do justice to J.D.'s experiences and to the community he came from. By all accounts, they developed what seemed like a genuine friendship during the filmmaking process. Ron saw J.D. as someone who had overcome incredible odds to build a successful life. J.D. went to Yale Law School, worked in Silicon Valley, and became a venture capitalist. His story was, in many ways, the American dream. But then something changed. After the movie came out, J.D. Vance's life took a very different direction. He decided to enter politics. He ran for the United States Senate representing Ohio, and his campaign was unlike anything Ron Howard had expected. The J.D. Vance, who was now on the campaign trail, was saying things that shocked a lot of people, including Ron Howard himself. The rhetoric became divisive. The tone became harsh. Things were being said that made people uncomfortable, angry, and confused. And then came the biggest shock of all. J.D. Vance was chosen to be the running mate for Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. Suddenly, the man whose story Ron Howard had told with such care and sensitivity was standing on stages across America, delivering speeches that many people found troubling. The contrast between the person Ron thought he knew and the political figure J.D. had become was jarring. For a long time, Ron Howard stayed silent about this. He didn't comment on J.D. Vance's political career. He didn't share his feelings about the transformation he was witnessing. Remember, Ron Howard doesn't do drama. He doesn't seek out controversy. But the questions kept coming. Journalists wanted to know what he thought. Fans of his work wanted to understand how he felt about the man he had portrayed so sympathetically on screen, becoming such a polarizing political figure. Finally, after staying quiet for so long, Ron Howard decided it was time to speak. In a recent interview, he opened up about his feelings, and what he said surprised everyone. Ron admitted that he was shocked by how divisive J.D. Vance had become. He revealed that he hadn't expected this turn of events at all. When he made Hillbilly Elegy, he saw J.D. as someone who could bridge divides, someone who understood struggle from both sides. But the political version of J.D. Vance that emerged was nothing like the person Ron had gotten to know during the making of the film. Ron Howard's words were careful, but the disappointment was clear. He talked about how the rhetoric had become so harsh, so divisive, so different from what he had hoped to see. For someone like Ron, who has always believed in bringing people together through storytelling, watching this transformation was painful. He had genuinely believed in the message of Hillbilly Elegy, and the idea that understanding each other's struggles could create empathy and connection. But instead, he was watching that story being used as a launching pad for something entirely different. What makes this even more complex is that Ron Howard found himself in an impossible position. On one hand, he's proud of the film he made. He believes in the craft, the performances, and the honest portrayal of a difficult story. But on the other hand, the subject of that film has become someone whose political views and rhetoric Ron clearly doesn't agree with. It's like watching your work be recontextualized in ways you never intended or imagined. The backlash from this situation has come from multiple directions. Some people are angry at Ron for making Hillbilly Elegy in the first place, arguing that he helped legitimize someone who would go on to promote divisive politics. Others are upset that Ron is speaking out now, feeling like he's betraying someone he worked with and portrayed sympathetically. And then there are those who appreciate Ron's honesty and see his comments as a brave admission that he misjudged the situation. But here's what's really heartbreaking about this whole situation. Ron Howard has spent his entire life trying to do the right thing. He's made films that celebrate human achievement, that show the best of what people can be, that inspire hope and connection. Movies like Apollo 13 showed us what humans can accomplish when they work together. A Beautiful Mind told the story of someone overcoming mental illness to make groundbreaking contributions to mathematics. Frost/Nixon examined how truth can emerge from difficult conversations. Every single one of Ron's films has been about finding the humanity in people, about understanding rather than judging. So for Ron to find himself at the center of this controversy, to have one of his films become politically controversial in ways he never anticipated, has to be incredibly difficult for him. This is a man who just wants to tell good stories. He's not interested in political battles or public feuds. But sometimes, as he's learning, you can't control how your work is perceived or used once it's out in the world. The situation also raises bigger questions about artists and their responsibility for how their work is received. Should Ron Howard have known better? Should he have anticipated that J.D. Vance might enter politics and that the film could be used to support a political career? Could he have predicted the divisive turn that career would take? These are impossible questions to answer. Artists can't predict the future. They can only work with the information and intentions they have at the time. What's clear from Ron Howard's recent comments is that he's struggling with all of this. He's not angry. Exactly. That's not his style. But he's disappointed. He's surprised. And he's realizing that even with the best intentions, sometimes things don't turn out the way you hope. The person you thought you knew and understood might become someone entirely different. The story you thought you were telling might take on meanings you never intended. Ron has also been dealing with the reality that some people now view Hillbilly Elegy through a completely different lens because of J.D. Vance's political career. What was once seen as a compassionate look at poverty and family struggle is now, for some viewers, tainted by association with divisive politics. That has to be painful for a filmmaker who puts so much care into trying to tell that story with authenticity and heart. The entertainment industry is watching the situation closely because it touches on something every artist fears. What if the subject of your documentary becomes controversial? What if the person you portrayed with sympathy turns out to be different than you thought? What if your good intentions lead to outcomes you never wanted? These aren't easy questions, and there aren't simple answers. Ron Howard's decision to finally break his silence and share his true feelings about the situation shows courage. He could have continued to stay quiet. He could have refused to comment whenever asked. But instead, he chose honesty. He chose to admit that he's surprised, that he's disappointed, and that he didn't see this coming. That takes guts, especially for someone who has spent a lifetime avoiding controversy. The response to Ron's comments has been mixed. Some people respect his honesty and appreciate that he's willing to address the situation directly. They see it as accountability, as someone owning up to the fact that they didn't anticipate how things would unfold. Others feel like it's too little, too late, or that Ron should have known better from the beginning. And still others think Ron shouldn't be commenting at all, that he should let his work speak for itself regardless of what J.D. Vance does in his political career. What this situation really reveals is how complicated the relationship between art and real life can be. When you make a film based on a real person's life, you're not just creating entertainment. You're creating a document that will forever be associated with that person. And if that person changes, evolves, or goes in unexpected directions, your film becomes part of that larger story, whether you want it to be or not. For Ron Howard, who has built his reputation on integrity, quality, and bringing people together through storytelling, this has to feel like a betrayal of everything he stands for. He made Hillbilly Elegy because he believed in the power of understanding different perspectives. He wanted audiences to see the humanity in people who are often overlooked or misunderstood. But now that film is caught up in political divisions that are the opposite of what he was trying to achieve. Looking at the bigger picture of Ron Howard's career, this is really the first time he's found himself in this kind of situation. After more than 60 years in the business, after dozens of successful films, after winning Oscars and earning the respect of everyone in Hollywood, this is his first real controversy. And it's not even about something he did wrong. It's about circumstances beyond his control and a person who changed in ways he didn't expect. The lesson here might be that even the most careful, thoughtful, and well-intentioned people can find themselves in difficult situations. Ron Howard did everything right by his own standards. He approached the material with respect. He tried to tell an honest story. He worked hard to be fair and compassionate. But life is unpredictable, and people are complex, and sometimes things just don't work out the way you planned. As we watch the situation continue to unfold, it's clear that Ron Howard is still processing what it all means. His comments show someone who is genuinely wrestling with difficult questions about art, responsibility, and human nature. He's not making excuses or trying to shift blame. He's simply acknowledging reality and admitting that he's as surprised as anyone by how things have turned out. What happens next is anyone's guess. Will this controversy affect Ron Howard's future projects? Will he be more careful about the real-life subjects he chooses to portray? Will audiences view his work differently now? These questions will only be answered with time. But one thing is certain, Ron Howard's decision to break his silence and speak his truth has added a new chapter to a story that's far from over. The man who played innocent little Opie Taylor, who directed some of the most beloved films in American cinema, who has maintained a spotless reputation for decades, is now facing one of the biggest challenges of his career. Not because of anything he did wrong, but because the world is complicated. People are unpredictable, and sometimes even the best intentions lead to uncomfortable situations. If you found this story as fascinating and complex as I did, make sure you hit that like button right now. This is a kind of Hollywood story that doesn't get talked about enough. The real human drama behind the scenes. Share this video with anyone who loves movies, who cares about the relationship between art and politics, or who has followed Ron Howard's incredible career. And definitely subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because stories like this, the ones that make us think and question and understand the world a little better, are exactly what we're all about here. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Should Ron Howard have said something sooner? Is he right to be surprised? What would you do in his situation? Let's have that conversation. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.